topic. Fatherhood. Those are all topics that you hear about every day.
Yep.
In society, especially in our community, because there's a lack thereof.
Lack thereof.
Fatherhood.
Okay.
Manhood.
Okay.
Actual men. I think I come from an era, I was born in the 70s, where the father figure was too busy out trying to get money to provide for their family.
Right.
So that meant, I'm going to do this out here.
Right.
Baby, you take care of the kids. And that's not a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing when you got kids at home.
Right.
And I come from a household that was sort of in that, that realm of, it was better for my father to be out trying to get money.
Okay.
And let my mom take care of
you.
Care of boys.
Okay.
And
how many boys were there?
It's me and my brother. It's me and my brother. But we close in age. But when there's boys, you kind of need that male figure there to, put your foot down. You know what I mean? My mom was good at it. She was great at it. But it's nothing like having that dad look over you like, boy, didn't I tell you?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it was difficult that he wasn't there, but we survived. And I just think that in that era, it was a little tricky. Nowadays, there are less fathers to me that's out there, putting their foot down with these kids.
Okay.
And I see a lot of mothers that are perpetuating that father figure to their children. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no problem with that, but there's still a sense of masculinity that's missing in today's.
I think
it's a comeback. It's a comeback. I mean, it's they're trying to come back, but it's still that cusp of where there's not a lot of men in the house.
Do you think it's more back then? It wasn't. There was no light shining on. There was really no light shining on. Now, because a lot of men, I consider myself a man's man. I take care of my responsibility. I've taken care of my responsibilities, and I'll continue to do that. I think now we're more relevant. We're more upfront.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's a slow process. It's a slow process. It's a slow process. Because I'm still seeing kids out there today. One woman, 5 kids.
Okay.
Single.
In many cases, more than one baby father as well.
That too.
So who do we blame? I don't want to say blame. Who's the reason for this? Who's the reason for this? Is it the mother that decides this new guy she's dating, whatever the time frame is, she's going to have a child with him, or is it that guy who decides?
In my opinion, it's probably like the saying, "Who came first, the chicken or the egg?"
I was going to say the same thing.
Because
I was going to say the same
the
thing.
the archetype of family was disrupted well before we even had anything to do with it.
Right.
And I mean, we could go back 400 years. We could go back 200 years.
Absolutely.
But
go back 30
we could go back 30 years. Exactly. But ever since black men were physically removed from the atom of the family, it has been a broken. It's been a broken thing. It has been a broken structure and a broken record ever since then.
Yeah, and I totally agree on you. One of my other shows or episodes, I know that's one of the things I talk about. Everyone seems to think this started, 20, 30, 40 years ago. Right. This started 300, 400 years ago when we were brought over on these ships, and the fear of who we were and how we demanded and commanded our families, and then those around us, we were separated, we were pulled apart, and every time we felt that build up and that manhood coming back, tear us apart again. You on that place, you check plantation, you go to that plantation.
And it's so funny that you brought that up, because I just recently took a trip to Indiana to visit my aunt.
Okay.
And she had all these pictures from, 1912 and 1915 and 1890.
That's really.
And I'm looking at the pictures. I'm looking at the pictures, and I'm like, whoa, y'all were really dark back then. I'm like, how were you that dark back then
Right.
and you high yellow now? She said, because boy, we was working in the field.
Okay.
So I said, wow, that's amazing. I said, well, where was my grandfather? And he said, he's right there. I said, so with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 kids, he was
still
right,
right
there.
there.
Wow.
That's amazing.
How do you do that? She said it wasn't easy. And back then it wasn't easy for a lot of families. But every so often you'll get 1 out of every 10 that can make that happen.
Right.
Today, I just haven't seen it.
Okay.
You know,
Did you want to say that?
I haven't seen it.
Well, I think also, he said that he was born up in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I was brought up in the 80s.
And me, I'm 65.
He was born up in 65.
I'm
Now,
older.
if you go back, now this timeline is really interesting between the three of us because it's
And this was done purpose.
It's a 20-year, 30-year time span. Now, if you think about it like this, your father was brought up in an era when marriage it might have been a more of a sacred thing in the family. It was like something that had to get done, especially at an early age with women. Like they were being married at 17, 18, 19 years old, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, your father, the age might have changed a little bit.
A lot.
He might have gotten married at an older age. Your mom might have gotten married at an older age, or might not have even gotten married, but they were together. My age group, I think, like around the 80s area, it started to change a little bit more, especially with regards to marriage. Less people were getting married. It was a lot more of a single parent household. It was like a single parent boom in the 80s or something like that. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe it had to do with the crack era. I really couldn't say. But
Which affected both sides, male and female.
It
It tore the
definitely
families
affected
apart.
both sides. But then now you come to the 90s and the 2000 era where we have a whole social media inclusion, where there's so much access to the outside world that there's nothing paid attention to the dichotomy of the relationship. So that's why people aren't staying in marriages anymore. That's why people aren't even getting married, because there's so many choices and so many options out there as opposed to sticking it out. Like people back in the 60s, 50s, they might have been married for 30 years.
So do you think, let me ask, because that's an interesting perception. Do you really think it's society and media and the availability to access, I should say, access to so many things that are pulling the fathers away from?
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily pulling the fathers away, but it's breaking up the union. It's breaking up the option of having options. For example, if I was dating somebody, we got into a serious relationship. All of a sudden, like I started heavily relying on social media, and we had a problem in the relationship. Next thing you know, we break up. I could hop on social media the next day and search for someone else, as opposed to going back to that person and trying to work through whatever issue that we had. Right now, that's available for everyone. In the 60s, that wasn't available. In the 70s, that was not available. In the 80s, that was not available at all. You could not just go on your phone and find women that live in Canada, or find a girl that lives in California. So if you didn't have long distance on your phone, you couldn't call anybody.
Right. So I get where you're going with this.
See what I'm saying?
And I'm definitely not debating it, because each era has something a little more advanced than the last to make that accessibility so accessible. What do you think about that?
That's an interesting dynamic. I never thought about that. I never thought about that actually. But like you said, each era had their own,
Because like with me,
like I had beepers, so
with me it was a house phone.
then
I came into the beepers.
Right, I had a beeper. It was like, oh, I know what this code means.
Right.
I'll see you later.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's what that was.
Right.
I That's it.
But now your beeper has a picture attached to it.
That's
and
true.
now the picture has stats attached to the picture.
I'm not convinced that.
Outside forces, I think we got to bring it back inside and say, what is it with us? Why aren't we able to sustain it?
Well, I'm taking it back to what you said about we've been structurally designed to break apart.
It's a mental thing, yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so even though my grandfather comes from a background where he tried to keep the family together throughout the course of history, that same mentality can come back into any generation. And in my father's generation, he was the one that was like, nah, I gotta get out of here. I can't do this. Like,
Right,
I need to make my move out here and live my life this way.
right.
You know, y'all are gonna be all right because I'm still around, but I'm just not in a house. You know what I mean? So, and then my father just passed away January 31st of this year. And I spent more time with him in the hospital the past 6 months before he passed
Right.
than I did in my entire life.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Gotcha.
You understand? But then in talking to him and getting into his mental, it was things about his mother. Because you notice I said my grandfather was
Right,
around.
right.
My grandmother was not.
Mm.
So that mental issue that he had with his mother not being in the house passed on to him.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So it was like, okay, well, I never really discussed this issue with my mother.
Okay.
How you abandoned us and left us there with this man to raise these kids
Right, right.
and never look back. And
See, that's what I
that
said at the
mentality,
beginning, is it always us?
that mentality passed on to him, and he did not think of her as his mother at all. And that led him down the path where if it was easy for her to just abandon me and have a whole separate life without me,
Right.
not that I want to do it, but she made it seem like it was okay to do it.
Okay.
You understand? So when he did it to us, it was okay because he felt like, well, I didn't do it like her because at least I'm still in y'all lives.
Right.
Hypothetically.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
But it affected him. And then in turn, it affected me and my brother.
Gotcha.
Now, my brother, he may have taken my father's abandonment as, you abandoned us, I'm not dealing with you, we good. Till his deathbed, he was like, I'm good.
Okay.
And then when he passed, he was like, I'm here.
Gotcha.
Which was cool.
Gotcha.
And I was cool with that. Me, I was just like, you didn't really abandon us. You weren't there to teach me how to shave and how to play ball and how to deal with women and all that. You know what I'm saying? He tried to cut. Any day. But he didn't teach me the things that a father
Right.
should teach you.
Right.
So what I had to do, well, I'm not gonna say I did, but my mother did, was she put me in environments that had male figures
Okay.
for me to look up to.
Understood.
And that helped me get through my whole life.
Okay. That's interesting. That's interesting.
But you're right, it's not always
The
on the
man,
male side.
right? It's not always the man. I think that's a big part that's missing. Again, we get the blame for it,
Right.
but we have the
Statistically is usually
well, statistically, because we're the body, we're the gender.
Right.
But when you look back and you dig into it, it's not always us. Just like that situation with,
Right.
with your grandparents.
Right.
It's not always us.
Right.
And then it led into your father. If your father, or maybe your grandfather prior to that, maybe if he had something like this, some men to sit down and talk to. I know back then, they were like, nah, everything stays in the house.
Right.
And even when your pop was coming up, because that's the same time my pop was coming up,
same
it
mentality.
stays in the house.
Right.
We
Too many
have
secrets.
learned.
That's the issue.
We have learned the difference.
Too many secrets.
Too many secrets, exactly.
And the elders, they held secrets like a slave master was going to chop off their foot if they open their mouth.
But that's what they were taught.
And it was passed down from generation to generation. I can go to my grandmother right now. God bless her. She's 87, 88. I would
They got some secrets.
like,
Yeah.
so like, what really went on back
What you say, sugar?
Right. She gonna hold it.
Yeah,
She
no,
gonna-
nothing.
But it's our job to dig. We have to keep digging. And again, you know, just to kind of complete my thought, this is why I think I've always thought it's really important that men need to learn to sit down and talk to one another. I'm not gonna harm you. You're not gonna harm me. We're just conversing. Tell me what's wrong. Maybe I've been through it already. Like that.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. There's somebody that's gonna see this and go, maybe I need to check Pops now. Maybe that's the angle I need to feed into and see if that's the problem.
It's funny. It's funny that we even going in this direction because I just spoke to a thread on Facebook the other day about why it's so difficult for men to share their feelings with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And my major point was that, like the word feelings itself, it touches on a feminine quality.
Yes.
And I mean, as black men, we live in a society that demands that there not be that side shown
Right.
at any moment. Because
Absolutely.
I mean, we have to be in front of the army.
Yep.
We have to be in front of the family, of course.
Yep.
And you know, so many times men bury themselves in their feelings.
Yes.
And then by the time it hits the fan, shit hits the fan.
Absolutely.
You know, so
And it's too late.
it's
Yeah,
too late.
always.
It's too late.
It's too late.
It's too late.
And that also touches on the topic of elders keeping secrets. Because, you know, I mean, your grandfather is not going to tell you some pertinent information that you might need to know. He might never have went to the
But
hospital.
let me
a day
ask
in
you
his
this.
life.
Let me ask you this, Troy. Do you ask?
Well, do you? Is the question.
So my answer is yes. So I was in one of those fortunate circles where I knew both sets of grandparents, both sets well into their 80s, and I knew my great grandmother on my father's side. She was with me up until I was 20 something, so I had time to really know her, and I knew that part of the family. One of the things I've always told my younger cousins, my siblings, I said, we have to talk to the elders. You ask these questions, and I did. I talked to my dad's father. I talked to him a lot because that's the family, the side of the family I was around all the time. Spoke to him a lot, and he would always say, you know, whatever I wanted to know, he would tell me. Except there was some incident that happened somewhere in Virginia, and he never told me about that. But that's another story. That's another story. But my point is, we let it when it boosts up. You found it? It'll be at the bottom. Okay. My point is, we have to, us, those coming up behind us, and then some of those right in this minute, we have to stop and talk to them. It shouldn't be a problem talking to another man that's not necessarily your father of a previous generation because they got the same stories, and we don't take advantage of that. I talk to older men all the time. That's how I learn. I learn what not to do. I learn what I'm up against. And if you talk to them, they're willing to tell their story. So we miss out on that part.
Yeah, I think when I was coming up, the organization that I was affiliated with, it was young boys from 8 years old to 18, and then we had mentors that were all older than us. But I think that experience of being with those older guys, even the teenagers, it was always a learning process. It was always a learning curve with them. So if I'm 8 and you 12, you know something that I didn't
Absolutely.
know. And then when I'm 12 and they 16, it's something else that I'm learning. And you know,
Right.
it just kept going like that. But
And just not to cut you off, but the other brother that I wanted here for this episode, Smitty, I've known him. He's from the Bronx. I've known him since he was a little boy. His dad was one of the OGs in the neighborhood. And when you saw the white, you knew he's proper.
right.
But I wanted Smitty here because he's a little younger than you are, I think. So Smitty brings another dynamic. Smitty brings another dynamic, and he's one of those that can say he grew up under me.
Right.
There was that, 8-year, I think, something like that, age difference. So he's 11, I'm 19. What I didn't know then is he was watching.
Oh
because I've had a few conversations with him, and he's indicated, yo, I watched you.
So funny that you said that.
Unfortunately, I came from a family that raised me right. I came from men that were
Right,
around,
right.
and they raised me right, so I was able to give back something to these boys that I didn't know I was doing,
Right.
which is crazy to me, and that's why I really want to. But we're gonna get you on the next one, Smith.
It's so funny because I was just talking to a couple of my brothers just yesterday. I went to a premiere, me and a couple of my brothers, and I was just like, you know what? The reason why I'm the way that I am is because of you guys. And they said, well, what you mean? I said, you know how we used to be on the bus coming back from this, that, and the third, or whatever, and y'all be talking like, yeah, man, I was with this chick, whatever. And I'm sitting there at 10 years old, like, what they talk about? You know what I'm saying? What they talk about? And they was like, so what did you hear? I said, I heard a lot of stuff.
Right.
They said, what did you do that we didn't do? And I said, well, when you messed up that way,
Right.
I flipped it and did it
Right,
my
right,
way,
right.
and I was good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So that, I mean, that goes to show that so we've been mixing up manhood and fatherhood, and you said at the beginning, they kind of meld together.
Right.
They have, especially if you have a child, you need to learn to be a man to be a father. And if you're a father, you gotta be a man. So there really is no separating the two. That's proof. You know, what I talked about, I think, is proof. And what you've seen is proof that manhood is alive. We need to find a way to make those come behind us see it, understand it. We need to stop running away from trying to educate young brothers. You know, one of the things I hate to hear? I hate to hear, I'm not messing with them young dudes, man. They shoot people. They're killing people. They don't want to hear it. They're not good. They're doing it. We know that.
They've been doing it.
They've been doing it forever.
It's been doing it
Forever. But they respect a man. They respect a man. I don't care what your size is. They respect a man that walks up on you and says, yo, chill out. That's not how we doing this, man. It's just about how you approach it.
I'm in your notorious neighborhood right now. That's where I lay my head at. And you know, the neighborhood is still notorious.
I'm a soft guy.
I'm the new cat in the hood. I'm the new cat, Harlem, in the Bronx. I walk with my head held high.
Right.
I walk with my family side by side.
Right.
I have no problems.
But people respect that because you're respecting yourself.
Exactly.
You're not profiling
'Cause
and, doing anything crazy.
I'm not gonna front. All of the stories that I heard about the area, I was like, oh, that's gonna be a problem over here. I'm gonna have to call the hood to come over here. We're gonna have to recognize, regulate this over here. But after I walked over there, with my chest out, with my arms by my side, my wife by my side, they look at me and they just be like,
You
know what I'm saying?
demanded respect. You commanded them to see your manhood without having to say a word.
and even when they wilding over there, I'm like, yo, I'm walking through here with my family. I got to chill out. He's like, no problem, black man. We good. Don't worry about it. As soon as y'all get through the block, I'm like, all right, bet.
And that's how it should be. That's how it should be. What was your experience in that kind of situation? Because you would be more in that category of those guys. Not saying you personally, but age-wise.
You know what? To be honest with you, man, like I can't classify myself to be in that category, only because of my upbringing and being around some really influential males. I had some really good training, so to say, and I did a lot of different rites of passage that would keep me from, headed in certain directions. I mean, I had plenty of options, and the only thing that separates a good decision from a bad decision is the choice.
Yep.
So, we've all been in those situations, but I mean, I personally, as a matter of fact, for the people that are, going through whatever they're going through on the block and whatnot, they always looked at me as like the medium.
Right.
Like
There's nothing wrong with that.
It's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like I remember one of my good friends, he got into some beef with another young dude on the block, and the first thing he did was come to me, like, yo, I know you neutral, so like I want to chill with you for a minute to clear my head and get my mind right. And at that point, I felt right there, like, I was embracing manhood. Like I was embracing fatherhood. I don't have any children.
Okay.
But in saying I was embracing fatherhood, it was like, you know, I'm not putting money in anybody's hands or, you know, doing anything like that. But my presence was enough to make another young man feel like a safe haven for him, for his own self and his own action.
For him to think.
For him to think.
And that's a good
Right.
thing. But that's, see again, that's you perpetuating your manhood. That's you showing that I've learned something different. I understand something different. I'm bettering myself, and you know what? I have no problem bringing you along with me.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've been down that road too, where I've had men my age approach me in a way like, I need to mess with you because I can learn some things. And when I first heard that myself, I was like, I'm not ready for that. You know, but just being who I am, I said, all right, let's roll. And all I did was kept doing the things that I was taught to do. And then he eventually, or they eventually opened up to me about things that were going on with them. And then, you know, now we've gone from just, I don't want to get in trouble to, I'm having issues with the law, or I'm having trouble finding a job, or, you know, I don't read that well, or I can't talk to nobody else. There's a sexual thing going on with me, your brother, and I need some help. We scared to do things like that, but when you put yourself in a position for another man to see that there's no judgment.
Right.
I got you. I'd rather help you than hurt you. Life works a lot easier.
Exactly.
You know, society puts men, especially black men, in a situation where expressing feelings is like showing weakness.
Yes.
And when you show weakness, you become
Vulnerable.
prey instead of the hunter.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of aspects just in society that it's difficult for men to be men. You know what I mean?
One question I have, not to cut you off, is I mean, we're three black men talking, right? Do you think that this is a black male issue? Do you think that this is a male issue?
I don't see it as much in the Caucasian side of humanity. I do see it in the brown culture more so than
I agree and I disagree. I agree and I disagree. Because you're right. It does happen, it's more pronounced
yeah.
in our community.
That's what
It's more pronounced in our community. I think in other communities,
they
swept.
yeah. Yeah.
If the son is weak, the father covers for him.
Exactly.
In our society, the son is weak, he's gonna be called out. So that's what I think, and I see that from generation. I have a son. My son's 29. Ask me, I did a fantastic job raising him. Now, I'll put it out there. Me and his mom divorced. I wasn't in the house every day for him, and there were stretches just because of demographics, because of finances, because of emotions. I wasn't front and center. But in his 29 years, I like to say at least 2/3 of those years, I was front and center enough that now he's like one of my best friends. And it's been that way for a while. It didn't just happen. He's got 2 boys of his own now. And he's down in Georgia. But what 29-year-old who didn't have a great relationship with his father is going to take time to send him pictures, hit a video, talk to your grandson, you know, all those kind of things using that technology again. So it helped me acknowledge that I did right. I stayed front and center no matter what the circumstance was. I can think about times where I'm broke. When I say broke, I'm talking broke. I'm talking $12 in the bank and don't know when I'm getting another dime. And it was, Daddy, I need a haircut. And I'd take $10 out the ATM because that's all you could take out.
Right.
And find another $2 so I can put the 12 in there so his mother can get 11 out the bank just to give him for a haircut. That's manhood, that's fatherhood, that's concern, that's doing what you need to do to make sure these things happen.
That's what I said. Society puts men, especially our men.
But we have to fight that though.
Yeah, it's a fight that it's a difficult fight because it's not, you're not really fighting against a person.
Mm-hmm.
fighting
Right.
against
When it's one and done.
You know what I'm saying? You're fighting against a system,
Never
and the
ending
system
battle.
is designed to separate you.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And the only way that you can penetrate the system is if you rewrite the system.
Okay.
And in order to reboot the system, something got to shut it off.
So you don't think
Technology is very closely involved in the system.
Well.
Very
let me ask.
I'm looking at it at a legal aspect.
Okay.
Because I work in that field.
Right.
And the way that, just put it out there, the way that the Constitution is written,
Okay.
it's written in a way that is designed for
We know
us
that.
not to achieve.
We know that.
Well, I mean,
Right.
number
So
one,
in
legal
order-
jargon.
In order to
Right.
reboot the system,
Right.
you're talking about
Rewriting the
redoing the
Constitution.
Constitution.
So we
And
know
as a
in our
man-
lifetime
Right.
that's not gonna happen.
Not.
I
But-
don't think the Constitution was written for us.
It wasn't.
per se.
It wasn't.
That's
It
what-
It wasn't.
That's
That's
the
my
point.
point.
Sure.
And
It wasn't.
that's what's keeping
But that's the law of the land.
the culture.
And it's the land we live in.
Right.
And we can say, you know, I'm of African descent and all that other stuff, but
I
we're
mean,
Americans. We were born here. We are Americans.
Absolutely.
So we have the right to protest. And when I say protest, let's not think Martin Luther King. I'm saying we have the right to protest and address those things. It's how do we get that collective together? And how do we change? We can't do it the entire thing at one time. We've got to study it and figure out piece by piece how we're gonna make it happen. And that's when we get lost. Now we can't bring that unity that we had before we were brought over here. We don't bring that to the table. You got something? I'm gonna try to get some of what you got. Instead of saying, how'd you get that? Help me get some. And then you saying, come on, let's
Well,
go.
see,
Right.
even in you asking him how'd he get that, he could have the mentality of, I can't tell you how I got that because you're going to try to take it from me.
My point. How do we start losing that?
Now it's funny because my grandfather, back when I was living in Harlem in the 80s, this is crack era of gangs, gangsters, all of that. And even as a little kid, out on 145th and 8th Avenue, right in front of the S&S Club, out there with my grandfather just
Spot.
chilling. Right.
Right.
You know, he would say, this is one thing that I want you to do for the rest of your life. He said, always buy black. And I was like, man, Eddie, how am I buy black? Black people don't own nothing. Like, how am I buy something that ain't there? He said, if you try to buy black, you'll always need it. To this day, I see people still have issues with buying black. There's a certain network that's designed.
So let's do this. Let's do this
That's
because
designed for us.
we're going far away.
No,
But I
no.
understand.
No, it's going to go back to the
Okay.
beginning.
Okay.
Designed for us. And we don't invest in that.
It's still owned by us.
No. The
Right.
reason why is because we didn't invest in it.
Right.
All right?
Right.
Had we invested in it, that could have been our Black Wall Street. That could have been the beginning of another Black Wall Street.
So Magic Johnson, Oprah Winfrey, and
Selfish.
no. Magic Johnson, Oprah Winfrey,
Selfish.
and somebody else all have networks.
Yeah.
Do we support them?
No.
Why?
That's the $1 million question. That's the $1 million question.
It goes right back to where we just started talking.
But if we did invest in it, that whole aspect of building something trickles down to the family.
Isn't it the same thing if it's one of the other networks? Isn't it the same
Well,
thing?
it's
No.
different. It's different because when we talk about investing in someone else, we're not expecting a return, right?
Correct.
But that's different from other races investing in each other because they expect a return and they get it.
Correct. Okay.
So that's what
I
makes,
didn't think about
that's
that.
what
Okay.
makes the situation different on either end.
So-
if
so-
I'm investing in, okay, for example, Magic Johnson owns Starbucks and he owns Magic Johnson Business.
I don't even know if he still owns that chain. I think he might have sold it up. But he has plenty of business. Let's go.
In any event, I go to his restaurant and I patronize. That's me supporting him, but I'm not investing.
Okay.
Because with investment, you must see return.
Yes.
Right. Now, somebody else might invest in Nike, like by buying stocks through Nike, and watch Nike stock rise.
Mhm.
They will be gaining from that investment.
So why not invest in Magic Johnson Theaters or well, see if you invest in Starbucks, he's not that guy. He's just a franchisee.
Exactly.
So you're kind of investing in him by patronizing his store and supporting him because you're keeping his business afloat.
You're just patronizing. You're not investing.
So if you don't patronize him, the business goes away. That's it. He's done. So isn't it a form of investment still?
I mean, I wouldn't say that he's done.
Wait, let's just take the small aspect. I'm not talking about all of his wealth. Let's tell you the simplest part.
Let me make a different investment.
Okay.
You raised a great son. I raised a great daughter. We put our kids together.
Mm-hmm.
That's an investment. Because I know what you did. You knew what I did.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're together. They have kids. Same aspect.
Understood.
So now you're building a family.
Understood.
Now you're building what do they call it? You're building a compound. The compound creates the dynasty. And that's how it should be. It shouldn't be you raise your son, he finds a woman from across the sea. Or across
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
No.
So you're saying arranged marriage, basically.
So we fight amongst each other.